All right, Shabbos, good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Sivan, to thank Baruch Meir and Rena Dubin for dedicating all the Sherman Joshua this month in the zchus of refuah shlema for their niece, Chava Tzipporah bas Chaya Malka, and to thank Shmuel and Leba Dinovitz for dedicating the Sherman Joshua this month in the zechus of Aliyas for the Neshama of Shmuel's father, Harav Peretz Avraham, Benyamin, Moshe, Yisroel. To thank our Week of Learning sponsors, Ira Miriam Grossman, in honor of their 50th wedding anniversary, and Adam and Leslie Rosen in the zchus of refuah shlema for Esther bas Sarah. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshama will have an Aliyah, the families in Neshama, and all those who require a refuah should have one together with Kol Cholei Yisrael. Both say with that, let us begin. We have a beautiful, beautiful daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Kuf Zayin 107, but we are picking up Emirat Hashem on 106b Kuf Vav Amud Beis, and we are picking up 12 lines up from the bottom. Amar Abaye, right where we left off yesterday, 11 lines up from the bottom. Amar Abaye. Hi, so remember again, the Mishnah here, the sugya over here is really describing the details of the chalitza process. So remember again, we have our order as espoused in the Mishnah. What's the order? She reads, he reads, she removes the shoe, spits, she reads again, and then there's a general recitation from the Beis Din or from those assembled, as we will see. We also saw in yesterday's daf that halacha l'maisa, the order is not ma'akev. So although the Mishnah outlined the ideal order, l'maisa, again, if you disrupt the order, the chalitza could still be effective. Now, what we're also going to see is as follows. Going back to the beginning of this parak, remember again, we paskin that chalitza must be done in front of a Beis Din. But in this context, what's the definition of a Beis Din? 3 people, afilu hedyotos, even regular people. Now, the truth is, now we understand, but what's the reason for the Beis Din? In other words, if it's just hedyotos, why do you need a Beis Din at all? Because remember again, if they're hedyotos, regular people, why do we label it as a Beis Din? Because what must this group be able to do? They must be able to effectively feed the lines to the Yavam and the Yevama, to the man and the woman. And on both sides, that we get into now. Amra Abaye, Haiman de Kasef Gita de Chalitzasa. So we also remember again, it's actually interesting. So the Beis Din, it sounds like, so they would have to feed the lines to the Yavam and the Yevama, which means they would want to have it in print in front of them. So today, if we do a chalitza, right, and you want to have it in print in front of you, what do you do? You take out a chumash, right? That's why you just take out a chumash. So I will say, so what were they going to do? You're going to start taking out a sefer Torah in the middle of the chalitza? So Abaye says, here's what they did. Haiman de kasev gita de chalitzasa. Ultimately, again, if you're going to write this, literally Gita de Chalitzas in this context means just the piece of parchment, right? The section of Chalitzas. So they could use it to go ahead and feed the lines to the respective parties. Lichtov Hachi. Here's what you should write on there. Akrinihu lidida min me'ein yivami ad ava yivami. So we'll say in this document you should write instructions. Instructions. Tell the woman to say the psukim of from Me'en Yevami up until Ava Yevami. Va'akrinuhu lididei, then tell the man to read min lo ad likachto. Va'akrinuhu lidida min kacha va'ad chalutz hanal. So also, this is very interesting. Abaye says like this. Abaye says, don't write out the whole parsha. Don't write out the whole parsha. Instead, just on the document, write out the instructions. The woman should say, from this pasuk until this pasuk. And the man should say, from this pasuk and this pasuk. Now, Rabbi say, if you take a look at Rashi, why? In other words, if you're going to write it, Rabbi say, what makes the most sense? If you're going to write out instructions, what else should be on it? Right? Put the whole parsha. In other words, put everything on there. What's the problem? Why is it that Abaye is saying you could go ahead and write out the instructions, but yet he's not writing out the pasuk in its entirety? So we'll say, take a look at Rashi. It's very interesting. Rashi mi ma'in ad yivami mipnei shahaget eino misurtat lo bay lemechtav kulei pasuk. The kaimalon ein kos vindalatevos below sirtut. I will say the halacha is that in order to write any significant amount of Torah on a piece of parchment, the parchment requires sirtut. What's sirtut? I guess the English word is scored, right? Lines. So Abaye says, because people often, and again, that's a halacha la Moshe misinai, that a piece of parchment requires sirtot if you're going to write psukim on it. So therefore Abaye says, not everyone is proficient in sirtot, or not everyone knows the halacha. So in general, we don't write out just individual sections of the Torah. So therefore, all you're going to do is write out instructions. This way, the Beis Din knows. And I guess if they need a text, they'll take out a Sefer Torah and they'll go in and they'll read it from there. So the Gemara says, Mar Zutra misartet v'ksiv l'kulei parsha. Mar Zutra would know. Mar Zutra would take a piece of parchment and he would do sirtot. He would literally go ahead and score, right? He would make lines in the parchment, and halacha l'maisa, he would go ahead and write the entire section of chalitza on that piece of parchment. So the Gemara says, Maskif la mar bereid ravidi, mar baridi, vaha lo nitan likasef. But one second, now this is actually interesting that Rashi quotes the Gemara Maseches Gittin that says that halacha l'maisa, we don't write individual sections of the Torah. In general, we don't write sections of the Torah. In other words, we'll write a sefer, but we don't start writing. We'll say this actually gets into a discussion about the ability to write sections of the Torah to enable a child to learn. And there's an opinion in the Gemara that we don't even do that. So therefore, again, how can you write out a section of Chalitza? And I will say ultimately, again, the halacha is like Mar Zutra, that in general, we won't write out individual sections of the Torah. But we'll say, unless, of course, they are whole sections. Unless, of course, they are whole sections. Like, for example, you could write out Parshas HaKetoras, right? By Sota, they would go ahead and write out the section of Sota. That's a little bit different because here the Torah is telling me, but the Gemara seems to indicate that halacha l'maisa, they would write out the entire section of Chalitza. So this historically, again, they would write out the entire section on a piece of parchment. That's why that way the Beis Din would have it in front of them. And interestingly enough, but however, in order to do that, you'd have to have sirtot. You'd have to have the scoring of the lines. Beautiful. Amra Abaye, so we'll say, let's get back, finish the sugya. Rakika v'kaltasa haruach lo asav lo klum. Well, it's an interesting case. Abaye says, what happens if she spits and the wind takes it away? The wind takes it away so that the saliva never ends up landing anywhere. So the Gemara says, lo asav lo klum. Such an act of spitting is halachically meaningless. First of all, so before we go on, take a quick look at Rashi. Rashi says, v'hilchasa ki Mar Zutra. The halacha is like Mar Zutra. Rashi says, the kosvin, that we write the entire section of chalitza. This is different than writing a section of Torah for a child to learn. The Kimlon Torah chasuma nitna aval hay siras dvaremi. So I will say, this is actually very interesting. The challenge sometimes when writing a section of Torah is when it looks like you're writing something that is supposed to be its own Torah. So there's a concern. Torah was given chasuma, which means Torah is a complete and intact entity. And we're concerned that if you go ahead and you start writing sections of Torah, then what does it look like? That you're creating like individual Torahs. We'll say, brother, you see this concept that Chazal have this concern. I'll give you a good example of this. The Gemara Maseches Brachos says they used to include Aseres Hadibros as part of Shachris. Right? Aseres was part of Shachris. And then Chazal took it out. Why did they take it out? Why did they take it out? Because they said people were thinking, you see Aseres Hadibros is included in part of Shachris. Other pieces of Torah are not included in part of Shachris. What does that show you? That Aseres Hadibros is the most important thing. And that's not true. Aseres Hadibros is important, but it's no more important than any other section in Torah. So you see that Chazal have this concern sometimes when people will come to the erroneous mindset that something is like a self-contained section of Torah. So therefore, we don't want people writing parchments of individual parshios. When the Gemara Rashi explains over here, but here by Chalitza, it's clear why you're writing this section of Chalitza. If you were to write out the whole section, why are you writing it? Why are you writing it? So that Beis Din has access to it because they have to feed the lines. It's not the pshat that I'm trying to create the new sub-Torah, right? That's not the pshat over here. I'm just trying to go ahead and give the man and the woman their respective lines. So because it's clear what my intention is, and by the way, This is the same logic for sota also. It's clear. There's a process. Therefore, again, the halacha follows Mar Zutra in this section. Good. So I'll say so back. Kuf Vav Amabez 106b. We are now 8 lines up from the bottom. Amar Zutra. If a woman spits and the saliva ends up getting taken away by the wind, and I both say, see, the chap over here is like this. It's not the pshat that the spit has to land on the ground, but as we're going to see, the spit has to go in front of the face of the Yavam. Now, even not directly, but like in his presence. So the problem over here in this case is she spit, the wind takes it, and so it never went in front of the face of the Yavam. So the Gemara says, my taima, the yarka b'fanav ba'inan. So because the Torah requires that the spit, right, go in front of his face. So halacha l'maisa, because the wind just immediately took it, therefore again she would have to spit again. Therefore again, hilchach, hu arach v'hi gutza, if he is tall and she is short, kal tasu haruach, v'hi gutza, kal tasu haruach, ika b'fanav. So let's listen to this. Therefore, if he's tall and she's short, even if halacha l'maisa, the wind takes the spit away, because when she spits, she's spitting up, it's in his face, right? It's in his presence. And therefore she's yotze. So the Gemara says, Hiaruka v'hu guts. What if she's tall and he's short? So the problem is, ba'inan adamati lahade ape v'hadar azil. So we'll say ultimately again, if she's tall and he's short, so if the wind immediately takes away, it could be problematic, because halacha l'maisa, because he's shorter, we do need it to descend a little bit so that it is befanav. All right. Amar Rava says, Ha'achla tuma v'raksa. But listen to this. If she ate garlic and spit, achla gargishta v'raksa, or she ate clay and she spit, lo asa v'lo klum. Suppose her act of spitting is meaningless. She'd have to spit again. My time. What's the reason for this? The yarka me'atzma ba'inan v'leka. The boss says it's very interesting. We need, in order to spit, you have to gather saliva, right? We need the gathering of her saliva to be a process that she herself triggers, and not a gathering of saliva that is triggered by some other process. So I guess, I don't know, when you eat garlic, I don't know, maybe that causes the salivary glands to go into action. Or clay, I guess maybe if you chew on clay a little bit, it causes the salivary glands to move into action. So then it's not considered as if she's summoning the saliva. So this is very interesting. So also I point out, by the way, based on this Tamar Shah, the Rambam also quotes opinions that say that we try not to have her eat anything the day of the chalitza, right? Because the halacha l'maisa, when she summons the saliva, this should be an act that she's doing and not one that is triggered from some outside source. Quite fascinating. So the Gemara says, Furthermore, Rava says, the dayanim, the judges, have to see the saliva come out of her mouth. In front of the zakenim, she will spit. Incredible. The nikra shmo b'Yisroel beis chalutz hanal. So remember again, the Mishnah ended off by saying, after this, right, the Torah says, when the brother-in-law, the surviving brother-in-law, does chalitza, he is known within Klal Yisrael as beis chalutz hanal, the house of the removed shoe. So the Gemara says, mitzvahs b'dayanim v'lo b'talmidim. Now the Mishnah says there is a mitzvah upon the dayanim to actively make this statement. They say this. V'nikra shemo b'Yisrael beis chalutz hanal. He will be known in Klal Yisrael as beis chalutz hanal. Mitzvah, the Gemara says, I will say, by the way, it's interesting. You know, our Chava from this year, Daniel Chaver, who's not here today, Bakshim had a baby. He's making a bris today. B'shat tov u'metzlachas. So I was just thinking of this, reading this line, right? What do we say? Right? What do we say for a baby boy? Right? V'karei shemo b'Yisrael. The Yisrael, and the parents, Baruch Shem Zoch, to give him a name. Right here, v'nikra shemo b'Yisrael, beis chalutz hanal. See, I was saying, life is about trying to figure out, what's your name? Right? How are you known? What's the legacy you carve out for yourself? What's the identity you carve out? When people know you, what's the name they know you by? Right? What's the legacy that you've created through your actions, through the way that you live? So over here, They call him, so a little baby at 8 days old is given a name. His parents are given Ruach HaKodesh. They give him a proper name. Here again, halacha l'maisa beis chalutz hanal. Says the Gemara, Tanya Rabbi Yehuda, Pamach asinu yoshim lifnei Rabbi Tarfon. One time we were sitting before Rabbi Tarfon, Ubasa Yevama lachlotz, and a Yevama came to go ahead and do chalitza. Va'amar lanu anu kulchem chalutz hanal, chalutz hanal, chalutz hanal. So Rabbi Yehuda says, one time we were sitting before Rabbi Tarfon, we did a chalitza, and Rabbi Tarfon both say three things, or two things over here that are important. Number one, everyone said chalutz hanal. Everyone said it. Number two, they said chalutz hanal 3 times. 3 times. I don't believe this is how the Rambam paskins, that you have to say 3 times. But Allah Chalamayis, again, everyone on the Beis Din, in fact says chalutz hanal. Kala Omdin. Actually, we pass like Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah that it's not just the Beis Din, it's anyone who is present says chalutz hanal. Incredible. Abosai hadrun alach mitzvahs chalitza. Abosai mazel tov. Mazel tov. Also, good opportunity to welcome Reb Tzvi Friedman, who is joining our shir, Baruch Hashem, and just in time, by the way, just in time, Mamish, finish a parak in Yevamos. First morning in shir to finish a parak in Yevamos. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Good. I will say with that, Mazel tov, mazel tov. No time for celebration. Let's go. So it says the Gemara, Daf Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph, 107a. So I will say brand new Mishnah, brand new Sugya. You thought it couldn't get more exciting than Yibum and Chalitza. Well, you were wrong. Because there is miyun. I know you've been waiting for this day for a long time, right? So miyun, remember again, I will say we talked about it, and I'm actually being serious. I'll say these sugyas, when you delve into it a little bit, are really quite fascinating. So remember again, we know miyun because we've actually spoken about it a number of times, especially in the last few Mishnayos. Midoraisa, a father has the ability to marry off his minor daughter. And when a father marries off his minor daughter, that is biblical kiddushin, biblical marriage. Halacha l'maisa, Chazal created the right in the event that there's not a father. Father died. So Chazal created the right for the mother or the brother to go ahead and marry off the daughter. Right? And again, Chazal did this. I will say to us, these type of situations sound strange and crazy. But remember, again, from the perspective of Chazal, marriage, well, not from a societal perspective, marriage afforded financial and physical security. So therefore, again, sometimes it was in the best interest of this young girl to be married off. Chazal gave her mother and her brother the ability to enter her into marriage. The difference is marriage affected by a mother or a brother is only dirabanan. Because it is only dirabanan, therefore, again, the mechanism for dissolution of the marriage is miyun. Miyun simply means what? Refusal, which literally means the girl, right now the wife, right? The girl, the minor girl, has the ability to say, I don't want to be married to this man. And that's it. She has full control. And once she says, I don't want to be married to him, the marriage is done. The marriage is dissolved. No get, we'll discuss all this. That totally dissolves the marriage. When does she have the ability to do miyun until she becomes an adult? We'll get into this specifically until she becomes a gedola. Because once she continues to live with this man after reaching the age of adulthood, then Allah Chalamais, again, she's given her consent to this marriage as an adult. And then at that point in time, the marriage morphs into a regular kiddushin or a regular nisuin. But we'll see what that. So we'll say, here we go. Beis Shammai says as follows: Ein memanin ela arusos. Very interesting. Beis Shammai says you could only do miyun ultimately, again, in erusin. In other words, I will say the ability to exercise the miyun option is only when the girl is in a state of erusin. Once she transitions from erusin into nisuin, miyun is no longer an option. So the Gemara says, Beis Hillel omrim arusos unesuos. Beis Hillel says, no, halacha l'maisa, a girl can exercise the option for miyun, both from erusin and nisuin. Okay, we're going to see in this whole Mishnah is a number of machloksim between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. We go through each of them. Number 2, Beis Shammai omrim bebal v'lo biyavam. Both are very interesting. Beis Shammai says you can only exercise miyun with a husband, but miyun does not work with a yavam. So we'll say, just to illustrate this for just a moment, let's say Rachel was married off by her brother to Ruvain, right? And now she's a minor. Ruvain dies, no children, and now she falls to Yibum before Shimon. So Rabbi said, listen to this fascinating shayla. She's still a minor. So could she just exercise the option of miyun? Because we'll say, think about this in just a moment. We've seen already before that what? That halacha l'maisa. What is yibum? What is yibum? Yibum, or what is zika? Zika is an extension of the first marriage. So let her just go ahead and do miyun to the yavam, and potentially that could undermine, just take away the entire thing. So Beis Shammai says no. Beis Shammai says halacha l'maisa, miyun only works for a husband. Miyun does not work for a yavam. Ubeis Hillel omrim bebal ubiyavam. Beis Hillel says no, miyun works both for a husband as well as for a yavam. Good, that's machlokes 2. Machlokes 3. Beis Shammai omrim befanav, ubeis Hillel omrim befanav v'shlo befanav. They both say, where does miyun have to be done? Right? Where does miyun have to be done? So Beis Shammai says miyun must be done in the presence of the husband. Beis Hillel says, no, you could do miyun in the presence of the husband, not in the presence of the husband, it's all good. Next, number 4. Beis Shammai omrim bebezdin. Beis Shammai says miyun must take place in bezdin. Ubeis Hillel omrim bebezdin v'shalo bebezdin. Beis Hillel says miyun could take place in bezdin and outside of bezdin. Okay. Amru lahem Beis Hillel Beis Shammai mima'enes v'hi kitana afilu dalid v'hei pamim. So both say it's very interesting. Last machlokes. So Beis Hillel says to Beis Shammai, I think that a girl could do miyun even 4 or 5 times. And I both say, what that means is, so just again, it's like exactly what it sounds like, which is what I both say. Then halacha l'maisa again, Beis Hillel will say, listen, the brother, the mother could marry her off, right? Can marry her off. She refuses the marriage, right? Now I'm saying she gets married, then she does miyun, right? What happens when she does miyun? What happens when she does miyun? Both say, remember again, what we're going to see. What does miyun accomplish? Miyun fundamentally, or I should say, retroactively, undermines the marriage. There's no marriage. There's no marriage. I shouldn't say retroactively. I take that back. We'll actually see that. Miyun dissolves the marriage. So now, both say, let's say she dissolves the marriage. She's still a kitana, right? She's still a minor. So Beis Hillel therefore says the brother and the mother have the ability to marry her off again, and she has the ability to do miyun, as many marriages as she has when she's a kitana. So the Gemara says, Amru lahem Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai says no. Ein benos Yisrael hefker. No, you can't do that. You can't do that, right? Jewish women are not hefker. Look at Rashi. Ein benos Yisrael hefker. V'afilu mina erisin lo temayin v'ti ares la'achar v'tachzer v'temayin ela mima enes bazeh. So listen to this before we go on. So remember again, Beis Shammai says absolutely not. So what could a girl do? I will say if she does do miyun, ela mima enes. If she does miyun. And I will say it's not quite clear exactly what Beis Shammai is saying. We'll see this in the Gemara, but let's just read the words. So Beis Hillel says she could do miyun as many times as she wants, and she can get married as many times as she wants as she's a kitana. Beis Shammai says no, that's not what happens. Once a girl does miyun, what happens? Mamtenes, she cannot get married anymore. She has to wait until she becomes an adult, and at that point in time, Vitimayin sounds like what Beis Shammai is saying is what? She could do miyun again, and then she gets married. So why would she have to do miyun again? Then Amirat Hashem will see in the Gemara. So we'll say, let's go weiter. So I'm going to have Yehuda Shmuel. So we'll say, let's begin. The first point of contention over here is when can you do miyun? So remember again, we've got Beis Shammai saying the only time a girl can exercise the option of miyun is from when? From Erisin. Beis Hillel says Erisin and Nisuin. So we're going to have now 4 different opinions as to how to understand this machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So here we go. I'm going to read Shmuel. Number 1, my time of the Beis Shammai. Why does Beis Shammai say you could only do miyun from Erisin, not from Nisuin? Lefi she'ein t'nai b'nisuin. So we'll say this is incredible because there is no such thing as a t'nai by Nisuin. Now I will say, remember again. Can you make a T'nai in Kiddushin? Absolutely. Become Mikudeshes to me on the condition that she give me $5,000. So we'll say, what's the halacha? If the woman gives me $5,000, she's Mikudeshes. If she doesn't give $5,000, she's not Mikudeshes. What happens, I will say, if a man says, become Mikudeshes, let's do Nisuin, on the condition that a month after we're married, you give me $10,000. So Rabbi say, there is no such thing as a T'nai by Nisuin. Now, why is that? Look at Rashi for just a moment. Lefi shein T'nai, Rashi says, Moil b'Nisuin, shel gidola, va'afilo havilei T'nai b'shas kiddushin, achuli achlei b'shas bia v'chuppah v'chayde lehu kiddushin kamai. So we'll say, listen to this. Because what's the concern? We'll say, if you could attach a tanai to nisuin, remember again, what does nisuin by definition mean? They've lived together already. If you could attach a tanai to nisuin, and let's say then the woman does not come through with the tanai, Rabbi say, then what happens? Again, what happens if you don't come through with the tanai? Right, dissolves. And I will say, what does that mean? What is that? How then do we look at the bia as a bias nos? So I will say, we can't do that to the institution of marriage, right? So by kiddushin, where husband and wife are not living together, okay. So if there's a tanai attached to the kiddushin and the tanai remains unfulfilled, there's no kiddushin. But to go ahead and attach a tanai to nisuin, which then again means non-compliance with the tanai, renders the bias nos no. So we'll say, but what happens if someone enters into a marriage with a tanai on nisuin? Right? We'll say, let's just play this out. Right? Ruvain marries Rachel. And he says to Rachel, here's the deal. Right? We're going to do kiddushin, and our nisuin is effective in the event that after Sheva Brachas, you pay me $25,000. I don't like your family, so if I have to show up for Sheva Brachas, right, you're going to pay me $25,000 the week after Sheva Brachas, right? She goes ahead, right, comes week after Sheva Brachas, she doesn't pay, right? So the Gemara is telling me that it's okay, the no tanai by nisuin. I will say, why not? So Rashi explains the logic over here is because we assume when people go through with nisuin, they're mochel, right? They forgive or they forgo any attached stipulations. Essentially, there's an assumed mechila, there's an assumed forgiveness on any conditions once a couple enters into nisuin. See, even of us, I just want to be clear, when we say in tanai b'nisuin, I will say, it doesn't just simply mean you shouldn't make a tanai attached to nisuin, but it means more than that. What does it mean? Even if you made a tanai by nisuin, we assume the tanai is forgiven. So therefore I will say, watch this. So Beis Shammai says, Lefi shein tanai b'nisuin. So I will say, now watch this. So what does that have to do with anything? So if you allow a girl who's a minor to go ahead and do miyun after nisuin, tanai b'nisuin. Wow. I will say, this is incredible. Beis Shammai says, do you know why we can't let a girl do miyun from nisuin? Because I will say, what does that look like? What does it look like if a girl goes ahead and does miyun from nisuin? What does that look like? She is just unilaterally dissolving the marriage. So Rabbi say, again, now I understand the mechanism that's being used over here is not tanai, right? The mechanism here is being used is miyun, but the ability to unilaterally dissolve a marriage after nisuin, Beis Shammai says people are going to erroneously think that you could do that through the mechanism of a tanai as well. So that's why Beis Shammai says no miyun after nisuin, only during erusin. So Beis Shammai, according to this logic, fine, I understand why you can't do miyun after nisuin. What about miyun after chuppah? Right, the couple just went into the chuppah, came out from under the chuppah, so there's been no bia. So they haven't lived together yet. So why not go ahead and do miyun after the chuppah? Or the Gemara says, Lefi shein tanai b'chuppah. Ultimately, because Beis Shammai also holds, you can't attach a tanai to chuppah because of the same concern. What about a case where the father handed off the girl to the shluchim, to the messengers of the husband? Why can't she do miyun then? To which the Gemara says, Lo plug rabbanon. See, I both side, essentially, what Beis Shammai holds is that she has a very limited window in which to go and exercise miyun. What's the limited window? Erusin. Anything past erusin, whether it's that the father is handing her off to the messengers of the husband, or they're at the chuppah, anything past the kiddushin, the erusin window, she can't do miyun. And at the end of the day, what is Beis Shammai's concern? Beis Shammai's concern is if you allow her to go ahead and do miyun after erusin, it is going to lead people to think that you could attach a t'nai to nisuin as well. Because if you can attach a t'nai to nisuin, you can also dissolve nisuin. And that could be a disaster, because Beis Shammai says, we do paskin in t'nai b'nisuin, therefore no miyun after erusin. All right, what does Beis Hillel do with this? So Beis Hillel, Made the yadi dinisui ketana d'Rabbananinu. Beis Hillel says, come on, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Everyone knows that we're dealing with Kiddushay Ketana over here. Right? Shabbos say no one is going to go ahead and kind of extrapolate any lessons from regular marriage from this marriage. No, Shabbos say marrying a Ketana is so different on any single level. Shabbos say on the most basic level, the concept that the Ketana herself has the ability to unilaterally dissolve the marriage is incredible. So basically, let's say people know we're not dealing with a regular marriage, or we're dealing with Kiddushay D'Rabbanan. So therefore, again, even if she could do miyun from Nisuin, no one's going to extrapolate from there that you could attach it tonight to Nisuin. Good. Well, so that's approach number one. Rabba Rav Yosef Tarmi Tarbayu. So Rabba Rav Yosef Tarmi Tarbayu. Time of the Beisham. What's Beisham is logic. Lefi she'ein adam oseh be'ilas be'ilas znus. So I will say, according to Rabbi Rav Yosef, they have a different issue, which is a related issue, and they say, look, a person is not going to want to marry a kitana if halacha l'maisa she has the ability to do miyun after nisuin, because if she has the ability to do miyun after nisuin and to unilaterally dissolve the marriage, then I will say, what is the effective status of their having lived together? What's the status? Znus. So remember again, the man who's entering into this arrangement is a frum guy. So he doesn't want it to be that one day his wife wakes up and decides, I don't want this marriage anymore. She could just unilaterally dissolve it, and suddenly again, all of their time living together is now halachically categorized as znus. So what about, okay, so now based Shammai, I understand why halacha l'maisa, you can't do miyun after nisuin. But why can't you do miyun after they entered into the chuppah, assuming there has been no active relations yet? Lo nechalid tehavi chuppah di isura. A man doesn't want it to be that he's associated with a chuppah of isser. See, Rabosai, what's driving this particular approach is that halacha l'maisa, a man wants to be frum and wants to know that his actions are conducted in accordance with halacha. And the problem is, okay, if she does miyun from erisin, fine, nothing's happened, no problem. Once she does miyun at later stages, now what happens? She does miyun after nisuin. Then it turns out that all of the biyah was a biyah snus. Or she does miyun when? After chuppah. Then it turns out that it was a chuppah of isser. To which the Gemara says, Masar av l'shlicha abal ma'ikal meimar. So fine. So why, according to Beis Shammai, why can't she do miyun after the father hands her over to the agents of the husband? After all, at that point in time, no isser. To which the Gemara says, lo plug rabbanon. Because again, the rabbis did not distinguish in cases. What about Beis Hillel? Beis Hillel, kevan de'ika kiddushin uviksuva, lo asi l'meimar de'bilasa bilasnos. And Beis Hillel says, no, he tells the husband, you're covered. You're covered. Since there's a ksuva, and ultimately, again, since there was proper kiddushin, people know that this is Kiddushay Ketana. And people know that in a case of Kiddushay Ketana, there is an option of miyun. And miyun has the ability to fundamentally unravel the marriage. But you, husband, you're covered. Everyone knows you didn't do anything wrong or illicit. V'haraya, there's a chasana video, right? And there's a ksuva. And there's proof that you did everything correctly, and therefore he's covered. Good. Next, I will say Papa. Very interesting. But remember again, we actually spoke about this before. Halacha l'maisa, if a woman brings property into a marriage. So remember again, there's nichsei tzon barzel, nichsei mulug. We don't have to necessarily get into those distinctions right now. But one thing we know for sure, which is that a husband has the ability to enjoy peiros, usage of the property. So Rabbi said, now watch this. Rav Papa says the concern of Beis Shammai is peiros. Why? Time of the Beis Hillel mishum peri, and time of the Beis Hillel mishum peri. Both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel forged their respective shitas around peiros. What's the pshat peiros? Here we go. Time of the Beis Shammai mishum peri di amrit nesua timain. Beis Shammai will say like this: if halacha l'maisa, a woman has the ability to do miyun even from nisuin, what's going to happen? Shamit va'achalahu mina. So a husband is going to get whatever, he's going to maximize his benefit from the property, even to the detriment of the property. Why? Because what's the chashman that the husband had? The sof lemeifa kaima. See, I will say, Bisham says like this: if you could do miyun from nisuin, then I will say the husband is always living with the possibility that what? That one day his wife decides, I'm out. And I will say, what does she have to do to get out? Right? Click her heels, right? That's all she has to do, right? Nothing. So I don't want it. Well, if that's the case, it's funny, it's interesting. He has no security in marriage. Because he has no security in marriage, financial security in marriage, therefore, he's going to make sure that he maximizes his benefit from her property, which means he will make sure that he gets maximum benefit, even if it's to the detriment of the property, right? Therefore, again, Beis Shammai says, interestingly enough, in order to safeguard her property, right, and that he doesn't destroy it or use it in an irresponsible fashion, no miyun from nisuin. Fascinating. Beis Hillel says, Adarabba, kevan da amrit timain, ashbuchi mashbachlu. Beis Hillel is just the opposite. Since she has the ability to do miyun at any stage of marriage, he's going to be careful to take care of the property. Why? Listen to this. Savar dilo ait sile krove umafkile. Because what happens? What is he concerned about? He has to be concerned if her family sees that he's not taking care of the property, they're going to advise her to what? To do miyun and get out of the marriage. So I will say, therefore, again, in order to keep her in the marriage, he has a vested interest of taking care of the property. Incredible. Rava says, Rava Amra Haini time to Beis Shammai she'ein adam torech besuda umafsida. Rabbi say this is great. Beis Shammai says like this. Do you know why you can't do miyun from nisuin? Rabbi say it's very simple. If you allow miyun from nisuin, Rabbi say, then you know what's going to happen? People aren't going to marry a kitana. They're not going to marry her. Rabbi say, why are they not going to marry her? Because no one is spending money on a chasana that could be undone just unilaterally. No, right? So essentially, we're making this about money, but lamaisa, again, people just aren't going to engage in such a marriage. Look at Rashi, I'll say almost right across in Rashi. Lefi she'ein adam, Rashi says over here, Rabbanan takinu nisuin l'ketana, k'dei shelo yagu ba minag hefker, k'dei amrin l'kamon, b'cher shnasavi amrit mima enes mamani v'lo naspi lo dein adam ros alasas bilas. Oh, that's bilas. No, sorry. So I'll say, so again, the idea over here is, remember, Chazal have a vested interest in making sure that a man will marry this woman. The whole point of this rabbinic institution of marriage is to provide this girl with the physical and financial safety and security of marriage. So therefore, Beis Shammai says like this, that halacha l'maisa, if a man knows that even after nisuin, she could do miyun, why is he going to marry her? And if he is going to marry her, he's certainly not going to spend money on a chasana. Beis Hillel, ta'avayu nechaluhu k'dei delepok ala kol deishos. Well, it's very interesting. Beis Hillel says, let's be clear. When a man marries this girl, Bosai, do not look at this as a union that only serves her benefit or her purposes. It helps him as well. Why does it help him? Because it's good to be known as a married person. It's good to be known as a married person, right? Halacha l'maisa, being married and being known as married, halacha l'maisa goes ahead, gives a person a certain level of societal standing, gives a person a certain, at least perceived level of stability, and therefore halacha l'maisa, he has a vested interest in this as well. So therefore, I will say 1, 2, 3, 4 different interpretations of the machlokes of Shai and Beis Hillel. How do we paskin? So I will say we paskin like Beis Hillel. It's not a surprise, but we paskin like Beis Hillel, namely that miyun can be done both from irisin and nisuin. That's how we paskin. Good. Let's go weiter. Beis Shammai omrim bebal. Shavuot say, here we go. So remember again, next machlokes in the Mishnah was, does miyun work by both the husband, the baal, and the yavam, or by just the husband? So Beis Shammai says only husband, not yavam. Beis Hillel says both husband and yavam. Says the Gemara, Amar Boshia, mima enes lema'amaro, ve'ena mima enes lezekaso. So I'll say a very interesting case over here. Look at Rashi. Amar Boshia, and a couple lines up, about 5 lines up from the bottom. So the Gemara says, listen to this. Amar Boshia, mima enes lema'amaro, lebeis Hillel d'amri mima enes biyavam, lema'amaro mima enes, shim asa b'ma'amar, mima enes va'okarto, shelo teitzricha get lema'amaro. Ava chalitza, she b'shil zeka lo akar. So it's very interesting. According to Beis Hillel, who holds that you could do miyun even with a yavam. So I will say, what does miyun work for? So let's go back a little bit. I will say, remember again, mamar? We haven't had mamar for a long time. What's mamar? Ma'amar is like kiddush, not like. It is kiddushin given from the yavam to the yevama. Now I will say, remember again, Rachel's married to Ruvain. Ruvain dies without children. Rachel falls before Shimon for Yibum. What does Shimon have to do for Yibum? What does he have to do? Live with her. That's all. That's Yibum. Does he have to do kiddushin? Does he have to give a ring, a shavar puta? Nothing. But let's say he does. He gives her a ring. He gives her an Adam Shava Pruta. That's called Ma'amar. So comes along Moshe and he says that what can you use miyun for? Miyun could undo Ma'amar. Because we'll say under normal circumstances, what's the halacha? When a Yavam and a Yevama do Ma'amar, right? So Shimon gives a ring, Kiddushin, to Rachel. And then you know what? They decide, not a good idea. Not a good idea, right? We're not going to do Yibum. So Rabbi say, what's the halacha in this case? Remember again, we learned this. So you have to do two things over here. What do you have to do? You have to undo the Ma'amar, and what else do you have to do? Chalitza. So Rabbi comes along and says, to undo the Ma'amar, Miyun will work to undo the Ma'amar. You don't need to get to the Ma'amar. So Miyun will work, but what won't Miyun work for? Chalitza. So miyun itself works to undo ma'amar, but won't work in lieu of chalitza. So the Gemara says, Amar Chista, my time to Rabbi What's Rabbi Moshe's logic? Here we go. Maimer de medaita matzya akra. So we'll say because ma'amar is done with the consent of the parties, right? So ma'amar happens midaita, from her consent. Therefore, again, she could uproot it with miyun. Zeka de bal karcha. Rabbi say, interestingly enough, the zika, right? The zika comes even against her. So what does that mean, the zika comes against her? Well, the zika is a de facto status. Her husband dies without children. Now she has a zika ultimately to the brother-in-law. So that type of zika, the balkarcha lamatzia akra, she doesn't have the ability to undo with miyun. Which we'll say, in other words, essentially what Moshe is saying is like this. A share of Kissa's interpretation is that miyun, which is done of her own volition, could uproot processes that ultimately involve her consent, like ma'amar. Conversely, processes which are done to her, not with her consent, miyun cannot uproot. V'hari bia de bal karcha. I will say again, what about bia in general of yibum? We'll see. We learned one of the interesting halachas is that even if the yavam violates the yevama, that affects yibum. So bia itself, which is bal karcha, amud beis, umatzia akra. And yet Rabbi say, halacha l'maisa, remember again, so Rabbi say, remember, according to Beis Hillel, so miyun has the ability to go ahead and uproot yibum, right? According to Beis Hillel. Yet yibum is a process that could technically occur to her, even against her will. So what's the pshat? Ella, here we go. Bia um'amar duhu ka'avid matzya akra. So Rabbi say, you're right. Rather, Rabbi say, here we go. Anything that is we'll call a yavam-driven process or a human-driven process, like bia uma'amar, according to Beis Hillel, miyun could uproot that. However, zika, dirachmana rama Allah, lo matzya akra. So we'll say very interesting. So zika, essentially, any human-driven process, according to Beis Hillel, so miyun has the ability to uproot it. So miyun could uproot yibum, right? So again, if ultimately, according to Beis Hillel, right, Reuven dies, doesn't have children, Rachel falls to Shimon for Yibum, if Rachel could do miyun, right, and dissolve the whole thing. Or, let's say again, Shimon does ma'amar with Rachel, again, miyun could go ahead and uproot the ma'amar. However, again, the zika itself, Rabosai, so when Reuven dies and now Rachel falls to Shimon, the zika itself, which is something that halacha l'maisa happens to her, not with her, so that miyun by itself cannot uproot. So miyun by itself cannot uproot. Ula says, Ula disagrees. He says, no, miyun works even to uproot zika. How could that be? My timer, it's very simple, Rabbi say, it's very simple. My timer, nisui kamai ka'akra. Because Rabbi say, it's very simple. Why does miyun work even to uproot zika? Rabbi say, what is zika based on? Let's go back. Yevamos 101, right? Zika represents the quasi-marital status that exists between a widow and her surviving brother-in-law. Where does that quasi-marital status stem from? Where does it stem from? First marriage. Su'ula says, anything to do with her first marriage, she has the ability to dissolve through what? Miyun. And therefore, again, Ula says Miyun even has the ability to dissolve the zika. Incredible. So Rav raised the question to Ula. It was going back to the first Mishnah in Yevamos. This is incredible. Back to our first Mishnah. So remember again, this was by all of the cases of the Arayas. Now specifically, this was talking about a case. Ultimately, again, Reuven and Shimon, right? Reuven passed away. And remember, Reuven was married to the minor daughter of Shimon. And another woman. So I will say now we're getting into the cases of Tsaras Erva. I'm not going to take you back there. Don't worry. I see some of you beginning to shake a little bit, right? Hey, so I'll say, so Lamaisa again, we'll go back to the cases of Tsaras Erva. So I will say, so remember again, we had this interesting case. So imagine, so Reuven is married to Rachel and Leah. Okay, so let's assume for a moment that Rachel is Shimon's daughter, and she's a minor. So Shimon married off his minor daughter to his brother, totally legal. Now I will say, now the problem is that's Rachel. Leah is the co-wife of an erva. I will say Yevamos 101, when Reuven goes ahead and dies, these two women now, Rachel and Leah, fall to Shimon. Rabbi say, what's talacha? What's talacha? Right? Pater from Yibum. Why? Because Lamaisa, again, once one of the wives is an erva to the Yavam, by definition, she goes ahead and what? Pater is the other. So also remember again, what did the Gemara suggest over there? But I don't understand. Let what? Let Rachel do miyun, absent herself from this, right? She's no longer in the picture. And if that's the case in Allah, Lamaisa, Shimon could do Yibum with Leah, who's an unrelated wife. To which the Gemara says, anytime a wife could do miyun, but she does not do miyun, her co-wife does chalitza and cannot do yibum. Va'amayin, why is that? Timayin hashta v'takrinu l'nesune kamay v'tisyabim tzarasa. Remember again, so Rabbi says to Ula, if you're right, that miyun has the ability even to dissolve a zika, so I don't understand. In the case we just described, let Rachel do miyun. The miyun dissolves the zika. The miyun dissolves the first marriage. She could do that right now. And halacha lamaisa, Shimon, the surviving brother, could then do yibum with Leah. To which the Gemara says, no. Saras erva sheni. Saras erva is different. Why? Miyana bebal mutares la'aviv. So it's very interesting. In general, if a girl does miyun to her husband, she is permitted to marry her former husband's father. And I will say that's very interesting. Why? Because your husband's father is an erva, right? Even after death or divorce, right? Again, yet we see miyun fundamentally dissolves a marriage. So interestingly enough, biyavam asura la'aviv. But yet by yavam, right? Ultimately, she remains prohibited to his father. Alma b'shas nefila. Niris kekalaso. I will say, what do you see? Why is that? Because at the time of the death of the husband, this woman still had the appearance of the father's daughter-in-law. Hachnami b'shas nefila nira kitzaras bito. Therefore, I will say, so too in this case over here, at the end of the day, when Reuven passed away, even if miyun was possible for Rachel, halacha l'maisa, it already has the appearance of tsaras bito. Leah has the appearance of being the co-wife of the daughter of Shimon, the surviving brother's daughter. And therefore, halacha l'maisa won't allow it. Good. Amarav. So I just want to point out, we're still stuck with this machlokes Ula and Rava. So Rava will say, miyun does not work to dissolve zika, right? Miyun will work to dissolve ma'amar, but will not work to dissolve zika. Ula says, miyun even works to dissolve zika. So just hold on to that machlokes. Amarav, miyunu b'zeh asur lazeh. Another interesting case. If she does miyun with one brother, right, or miyun to one brother, she is still permitted to the other brother. Okay, I'm sorry, wrong. Miyun b'zeh asur lazeh. If once she does miyun with one brother, then what? She becomes prohibited to all of the brothers. Midi dahava abalas get. Because I will say it's no different than when a Yevama receives a get from one of the brothers. We'll say, take a look in Rashi. Rashi is right across from Tosos Machshirin. Miyana, Yevama be'echa min ha'achin, Yavmin asur l'kulan. So we'll say, listen to this. So again, we just said, if she does miyun with one of the brothers, she's prohibited to all of the brothers. Why? Because it's no different than a balas get. Rashi says, Im nasan la echad get pasla kulan. Remember again, if you have a case, Reuven died, Rachel falls before brothers. And the brothers are Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. And Shimon gives her a get. What happens, I will say, when Shimon gives her a get? What happens? Yibum is done. The door of Yibum is closed to all of the brothers. So Rav wants to suggest that the same way if she receives a get from one of the brothers, the door to Yibum is closed, so too if she does miyun with one of the brothers, the door to Yibum is closed. To which the Gemara says, Lav, Kevan de Isra lelachad, Isra lelachulu, hachanami loshna. Because Rav says the same way when she gets a get from one of the brothers, she is prohibited to all of the brothers. So too when she does miyun with one of the brothers, ultimately again she is prohibited to all of the brothers. Shmuel says no. Miyun abazeh muteres lezeh. No, it's not true. Incredible. Even if she does miyun to one of the brothers, then what Rabbi say? That does not go ahead and preclude her from doing yibum with other brothers. Below dam balas haget, and it's not comparable to the case where she received the get from one of the brothers. Why, Rabbi? Listen to this. Balas haget hu deka avidba. Rabbi say, remember again, in the case of the get, who is the actional participant? Who is the person who's initiating? Who? The brother. Oh. So Rabbi say, the brother is giving her a get. He's shutting the door to chalitza. However, again, hacha hika avdabe. Here, she's doing miyun. And let's say, how do we interpret her miyun? The amra lo ra'ina bach, velo tzavina bach. Bach hu de lo ra'ina, bechavrech ra'ina. So let's say, when she does miyun to one of the brothers, we interpret that as, what is she doing? She's saying to the brother, what? I don't want to marry you. Your brother, on the other hand, right, we could talk about, right? So the Maestro will say it's quite fascinating. So you see, by the way, it makes a lot of sense. When one of the brothers is giving her a get, it makes sense that shuts down Yibum for the brothers. But when she is doing something, the way we interpret her actions is she's shutting down Yibum possibility to the brother with whom she's doing miyun. But it doesn't shut anything down regarding the other brothers. We'll say, what you also begin to see according to this approach is it sounds like that miyun does not dissolve the zika, right? Because if miyun were to dissolve the zika, then once she does miyun with one brother, that would seemingly shut down everyone else. Okay, well, we'll see. But the Maisa was about we're building. So we'll say, and this is right, it's the Shmuel saying, Allah Maisa, miyun with one brother only precludes the possibility of yibum with that brother, but doesn't shut the door on yibum with other brothers. Next, Ravasi says, miyun abazeh muteras afilu lo. Wow. Ravasi says, not true. If she does miyun with her brother, Rabbi say, then what? She remains permitted even to that brother with whom she did miyun. What's the pshat? Lema Rabbi Oshia. So does he hold like Rabbi Oshia? Does he hold like Rabbi Oshia? To which the Gemara says, the Amar Eina Mema Enes L'Zekaso. I guess I will say, I guess that halacha l'maisa, it must hold like Rabbi Oshia, who holds that miyun doesn't work to undo the zika. So if miyun doesn't work to undo the zika, she's permitted to go ahead and do yibum, even with the brother with whom she did miyun. To which the Gemara said, "Bechad yavam hachinami dematzia akra." So we'll say the truth is, if we were dealing with just the case where there's one yavam, then ein hachinami through miyun she would have the ability to uproot the zika. However, again, hacha b'shnei yav min askinon de'ein miyun lechatzi zika. So we'll say this is fascinating. Even if you hold that miyun could undo a zika, right? Miyun only works when it undoes a full zika. This is fascinating. When you have two brothers, those brothers, at least according to what Ravasi is saying right now, those brothers are considered to share the zika, right? Each brother, quote unquote, has half a zika. So therefore, when she does miyun with one of the brothers, Rabosai, then what? This is fascinating. So what is she effectively doing with miyun with one of the brothers? She's dissolving what? Half a zika. Rabosai, what's the effect of dissolving half a zika? What's the effect? No effect. It's as if nothing's happened. So it's like quite fascinatingly, Rav Asi is saying, therefore, if there are two brothers, if she does miyun with one brother, if there's one brother and she does miyun, fine. It works. She's dissolved the zika, according to that approach. But halacha l'maisa, if there are two brothers and she does miyun with one of them, it's a meaningless act. It's a meaningless act because you can't dissolve half a zika. How meaningless is it? So meaningless that if she decides in the next moment that she wants to marry that brother, she could do so. Incredible. If she does miyun with one brother, she is permitted to the rest of the brothers. And they did not agree with him. Who didn't agree with him? Amar Abaye, Rav. So Amar Abaye, Rav, Rava Amar Aboshia, Family Rabbi Asi. So we'll say Machlokes who disagreed with him. So we'll say the resolution of this in Meretz Hashem we're going to see tomorrow. Let's just do another line. In front of. So I will say, so again, so just understand what we still don't know, we still haven't resolved, is the ability, what does miyun do? Here's what we know. We know miyun dissolves marriage, right? What stage of marriage does miyun dissolve? Well, we pass like Beis Hillel. So therefore, what is miyun going to dissolve? Both erusin and nisuin. I will say we also know, well, we don't know yet, we also know that miyun dissolves what? Ma'amar. Right? You wouldn't need a get after ma'amar if you have miyun. What are we not sure about? What does miyun do legabe yibum? Right? Or say it differently, what does miyun do legabe zika? See, Beis Shammai says it does nothing. Beis Hillel says it works. In Beis Hillel, we're not sure how much does it work and to whom does it work. We'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up Amirat Hashem with the sugi tomorrow and see the halacha l'mais on this as well. Shkoyach.